This is NBC Nightly News, Monday, April 30, reported by John Chancellor.
Good evening. The biggest White House scandal in a century, the Watergate scandal, broke wide open today. The Attorney General, Richard Kleindienst, has resigned because, in his own words, he had close personal and professional associations with people who may have broken the law. The two closest men to the president, H.R. Haldeman, his chief of staff, and John Ehrlichman, his chief domestic advisor, have resigned. Last week, both men were fighting hard to keep their jobs. The president's White House legal counsel, John Dean, has been fired. Reportedly, Dean is implicated in efforts to cover up the Watergate scandal, and he may implicate Ehrlichman and Haldeman. The Secretary of Defense, Elliot Richardson, will be nominated as Attorney General. Leonard Garment of the White House will fill in for John Dean. All this in a presidential statement read by Press Secretary Ron Ziegler.
The President has asked me to announce that he has today received and accepted the resignation of Richard Kleindienst as Attorney General of the United States. He is appointing Elliot Richardson to succeed Mr. Kleindienst as Attorney General and will submit Mr. Richardson's name to the Senate for confirmation immediately. President Nixon has also asked me to announce that he is today accepting the resignation of two of his closest friends and most trusted assistants in the White House, H.R. Haldeman and John Ehrlichman. The President told them he knew their decision to resign was difficult and that his decision to accept it was also difficult. But he also said that he respects and appreciates the attitude that led them to it. The President wishes to emphasize that neither the submission nor the acceptance of Mr. Haldeman's and Mr. Ehrlichman's resignation at this time should be seen by anyone as evidence of any wrongdoing by either one. Such assumptions would be both unfair and unfounded. I've also been asked to announce that the President has today requested and accepted the resignation of John Dean from his position of the White House counsel.
The White House is in a state of shock, and a lot of people here are wondering how many more heads are going to roll. For the time being, the nerve center of the government has gone virtually dead. While there's no word yet on replacements for Haldeman or Ehrlichman, there's a general feeling the vaunted White House staff structure itself will now be revamped so as to provide greater access to the president. There's no word either on a new Secretary of Defense, but some officials are saying privately the administration may now have difficulty in recruiting good people to work for it. The president himself worked in solitude throughout the day at his Camp David retreat, preparing his speech. He spent the weekend at Camp David talking to most of the people involved in today's announcements. Haldeman, Ehrlichman, Kleindienst, Richardson, Garment, but not Dean. He also discussed his problems at length with a man he has frequently turned to during past crises, Secretary of State William Rogers. Tonight, the President is expected to explain to the nation how he reached his drastic decision and why. Richard Valeriani, NBC News at the White House.
Both Haldeman and Ehrlichman say they will voluntarily cooperate with the Watergate grand jury and the special Senate investigations, although there have been reports that they would have been asked to do that in any case. And President Nixon says he's given Elliot Richardson the job of recommending changes in the law so that, to use the president's words, future campaign abuses of the sort recently uncovered may be prevented. Ehrlichman, in an interview with NBC News, said tonight that there has been too much innuendo and rumor flying around about Watergate. He said also that he and Haldeman have become symbols in the scandal. Ehrlichman said again he is innocent of any wrongdoing. Tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, President Nixon goes on television and radio to talk to the country about Watergate. The president's drastic shakeup at the White House pleased almost every member of Congress for various reasons. Many senior Republicans have been urging the president to clean house, and he has now acknowledged that pressure. Another reason is that of all the 2.5 million people in the executive branch, by far the most unpopular were H.R. Haldeman and John Ehrlichman, unpopular with Republicans and Democrats alike. Paul Duke was on the Hill when those resignations were announced.
One Republican senator said the news was enough to cause dancing in the halls of Congress. The remark illustrated the deep dislike of Haldeman and Ehrlichman, long regarded as arrogant and contemptuous toward members of Congress. Because the two aides demanded unswerving loyalty to the president, Republicans found it difficult getting to Mr. Nixon if they deviated even slightly from White House policy. The result was bad feeling and bad relations for Mr. Nixon. Thus, there were no tears for Messrs. Haldeman and Ehrlichman.
I don't think they like people. I think that they just give the attitude that they didn't like people. My impression of Haldeman, very shortly after he was in there, and Ehrlichman, I think particularly of Mr. Ehrlichman, very soon after he was in there, I'd met him at receptions. I happened to run into him at the airport with his family. He's evidently putting them on a plane for someplace. I went up and spoke to him. Well, I never got such a cool-off in my life. I'm sure he knew who I was, but this is typical of the whole thing.
I don't really believe that they told the president everything. And I assume when they saw themselves getting in hot water, they're even less inclined to tell the president anything. Some thought it would blow away. Some thought it would go away. The result was that it didn't. The result beyond that is that it's not a disaster to the Republican Party, but it certainly stained the political system and all of us involved in it.
The attempt to intimidate the members of the Congress is the same as the attempt to intimidate the members of the press and great newspapers and television and radio networks and so forth. The media has been subjected to the same process that we have, the same arrogance they have been the recipient of. And why this was not apparent before, I do not know. But I am very pleased that the president has now acted as precipitously, as thoroughly as he now has, and I hope every last person that was involved in this case will be dismissed from the federal government.
Watergate is added to Mr. Nixon's difficulties on Capitol Hill, but with Haldeman and Ehrlichman gone, White House relations with Congress may well improve once the scandal is over. Paul Duke, NBC News at the Capitol.
Fred Briggs went out to a Republican suburb of Chicago today, a suburb which has always voted for Richard Nixon. Briggs talked to people trying to find out how they felt about today's White House announcement, and here is his report.
Wilmette is a high-income North Shore suburb of Chicago. It has a long Republican tradition, and it held to that last November by re-electing Richard Nixon by a better than 2-to-1 margin over George McGovern. We talked today with some Nixon supporters to see how they feel now in light of the Watergate revelations.
I think it reflects poor judgment on Nixon's part.